John J. Bowman Single Barrel Bourbon. Is it a good alternative to Blanton's and other Buffalo Trace products? I'm Jason C. and welcome to the Master and Drum Whiskey Room. Today's review features John J. Bowman Single Barrel from the A. Smith Bowman Distillery, which was purchased by Sazerac, owners of Buffalo Trace, in 2003. While there's a lot of speculation that the bourbon in this bottle is essentially distillate from Buffalo Trace, I thought it would be fun to review the John J. Bowman Single Barrel and compare it to Blanton's and a couple of other offerings from Buffalo Trace. First, let's talk a bit about Virginia's oldest distillery, the A. Smith Bowman Distillery. In 1927, A. Smith Bowman purchased the 7,200-acre Sunset Hills farm in Fairfax County to open up a dairy and a granary. Shortly after bringing the idea to life, his fields became so abundant that he needed a use for the excess grain. Now, like a lot of farmers back then, they didn't want their excess grain to go bad or get eaten by mice, so one way to store any excess grain was to distill it and turn it into whiskey. So in 1934, A. Smith Bowman built a distillery on the farmland and turned it into a family business. With the help of his two sons, he produced the first ever batch of Virginia Gentlemen. Now, up until the 1950s, A. Smith Bowman Distillery was the sole producer of legal whiskey in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Fast forward to 2003, it was purchased by another family business named Sazerac. Today, the family-owned distillery has relocated to Fredericksburg and continues to create brands that honor historical pioneers like Bowman Brothers Small Batch, Isaac Bowman Port Finish Bourbon right here, experimental finishes, they make gin, they make rum, and today's review, the John J. Bowman Single Barrel, which is named after Colonel Bowman, who was the first military commander and governor of Kentucky County. So the reason why I wanted to review this one is about the backstory behind it, which has always been a bit hazy. Now, it's believed the distillate they source comes from Buffalo Trace and could be the number 1 mash bill or the number 2 mash bill. John J. Bowman Single Barrel is supposedly triple distilled, twice distilled at Buffalo Trace, and then redistilled once more in A. Smith Bowman's unique copper still. The whiskey itself is then aged on site in Virginia. This is a non-age stated bourbon, but according to the company's press materials, John J. Bowman Single Barrel is aged between 9 to 10 years old, bottled at 100 proof, and retails for about $50. So what I want to do today is review the John J. Bowman and then compare it to Blanton's, Eagle Rare, and also Rock Hill Farms from Buffalo Trace to see what the differences are from that extra distillation through a pot still and see if there are any similarities as well. Let's get into the nose first, guys. Here we go. Getting a lot of caramel and apple on here. Definitely a rich kind of candy caramel apple going on right out of the glass. Definitely a little bit of dark fruit there. Definitely get a cherry note. It's really apple forward. There's a slight nuttiness to it as well. I don't know if it's that quintessential Buffalo Trace pecan note that I usually get, but there is a slight nuttiness to it. Definitely a little bit of oak there. Not overflowing with oak though by any means. Cinnamon. There's some nice baking spices here too, I must say. Little cinnamon apple, little cinnamon to go along with that apple, kind of apple pie-ish a little bit. All right, let's get into the first sip and see what we get. Cheers, guys. Ooh. Wow, that was way better than I thought it was going to be coming off the nose. Definitely a good amount of spiciness up front. There's this prickliness that you get right on the front of the palate. Big load of caramel right into the mid palate. That apple continues to hang around a bit. Butterscotch. That was a really nice first sip. Let's go over another taste. Here we go. You know what surprised me about this bourbon is the mouthfeel on it. It's a lot oilier than I thought it was going to be. As I mentioned, A. Bowman takes that distillate and runs it through their own pot still in Virginia before they age it in Virginia as well. Now, pot stills can give a different texture to a whiskey or a bourbon. They come in different sizes. Shorter pot stills deliver a heavier flavored, more palate-clinging whiskey, which I think is the case here. And taller pot stills can give you more indistinct, lighter whiskey. So it's really all a matter of preference to you and what you like. But I really like the oily mouthfeel on this one. So let's get another sip. Here we go. Cheers. Yeah, it just has a really nice balance here. You're getting a lot of caramel, a lot of vanilla, slight hit of an orange in there too, some orange rind. Definitely the baking spices are hanging on. The finish is kind of maybe short to medium. You're definitely getting a little bit of a Kentucky hug there. This is 100 proof, so It's not a 90 proof or 80 proof where it's going to be a little bit easier. This does have a bite to it. Now remember, it could be Buffalo Trace Mash Bill 1, which is their low rye, which you find in regular Buffalo Trace, Eagle Rare, Colonel Taylor. Or it could be Buffalo Trace Mash Bill 2, which is their higher rye mash bill, which you find in Blanton's, Elmer T. Lee, Rock Hill Farms, and offerings like that. So it'll be interesting when we do the similarities here. Let's go in for one more sip before we do the comparison. Cheers. Now you're just left with a really nice balance. It's nothing mind-blowing. You have some nice toffee notes, some orange, vanilla. I think this is more of a higher rye, unless that pot still to me is just giving it a little bit more of a bite to it, which could be the case. It's a little bit hard to distinct, but it is leaving a nice spiciness on the back end. It's a little bit herbal, it's a little bit cinnamony, a little bit of touch of clove there too. But I really love the toffee, orange, caramel, vanilla balance that I'm getting in this bottle. So just a really good solid bourbon for 50 bucks. So let's do a comparison. All right, everybody, so we have a pretty fun lineup right here. We have the John J. Bowman Single Barrel going up against Blanton's, Rock Hill Farms, and Eagle Rare. I just want to see if there's some similarities here that I could pick up from these Buffalo Trace products that might translate to this, or does that extra pot still distillation in this really set it apart with the John J. Bowman? So let's first compare with Blanton's. Now, Blanton's comes in at 93 proof, so it's a little bit lower proof than this one. All right, so let's compare John J. Bowman and Blanton's real quick. Now, for me, off the bat, they do smell similar. The Blanton's, though, is a little bit more muted. I think the John J. Bowman is kind of jumping out the glass a little bit more, and that just could be in part to the proof. The John J. Bowman, I'm getting more of that spice. I'm getting more of that cinnamon that was coming through earlier. Definitely a good amount of that orange that I was mentioning, too, on the palate. Now that it's had time to open up, it's coming out a little bit more. The Blanton's is just sweet caramel, vanillas. Getting a little bit more of an oak presence, though, on the Blanton's, which is a little bit surprising. Yeah, I'd say the difference on the nose here is this comes in with a little bit more of that orange spice, a little bit more proof. It definitely seems like you're getting some more baking spices here, whereas the Blanton's, it's just a lot sweeter to me. It's coming in way more orange and caramel, rich vanillas. Yeah, the biggest difference for me is you definitely smell a little bit more of the proof here on the John J. Bowman, but you also, I feel like I'm getting more rye spice accents on here. I'm getting a little bit more of a bite to it coming out of the nose. Whereas the Blanton's, I'm getting more sweet. I'm getting more caramel, more vanilla. It's not as potent coming out of the glass, maybe because it's only 93 proof compared to the 100. But there is a little bit of that similarity when you get to that pecan type of nuttiness characteristics that I was getting in both. So there is some similarities there a little bit. Let's try the Rock Hill Farms, which is also 100 proof. Again, I think these two come in more similar than even the Blanton's. But again, the Buffalo Trace just has another bit of an extra sweetness factor to it. This one's a little bit more potent on the vanilla and the caramel, whereas the John J. Bowman is coming through with a lot more of a rye spice characteristic I'm getting on here. A little bit more of a sharpness, a bite. That orange, that citrus is really jumping out. Where on the Buffalo Trace, those beautiful caramels and vanillas that we're used to is still coming out of the glass here. Let's try the Eagle Rare, which is the Mash Bill 1. So with the Eagle Rare, I'm getting more cherry on the nose here. A little bit more cherry, a little bit more apple here on the nose than I'm getting on the other three. Definitely that beautiful caramel vanilla aroma that you get from Buffalo Trace is definitely on the nose. Yeah, so there is a difference with all these four. I feel like all three of these have a little bit more amped up caramel vanilla, whereas the John J. Bowman is giving you a little bit more of a butterscotch and rye spice orange note. So let's do a quick taste of all three and see what we get here. So the John J. Bowman first. Yeah, there's that prickliness to it, that rye spice, that black pepper note that just kind of lingers on the palate. It is sweet. It's coming through still more citrusy. That's a really nice bourbon. All right, let's try the Blanton's now. Cheers. Ooh, that's a good bottle of Blanton's, actually. This one, again, I'm not getting that spiciness that I was getting on here. This is a little bit more smoothed out. But the flavors are pretty similar. You are getting some of those nice vanilla flavors, those caramels. A little bit of toffee I'm getting on this one. Remember, Bland's is a single barrel, and so is the Bowman. So is the Rock Hill Farms. So you could get some differentiating flavors from bottle to bottle. But so far, this one is definitely more oaky than this one as well. One more sip. Yeah, on the Blanton's, I'm getting more More caramel, a little bit more of a molasses note too. Definitely more of an oak profile than the John J. Bowman. All right, let's go into the Rock Hill Farms and see what we get here. Cheers. All right, the Rock Hill Farms might be the closer of the two to the John J. Bowman. This one I'm getting more of a citrus note in here. There is some nice vanilla, a little bit of a butterscotch note. So far, that might be the closest twin brother here to the John J. Bowman. Let's go for one more sip. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit more of that pecan note that I love in Buffalo Trace. Definitely getting that prickliness, but it's not coming through, I don't think, from the rye. I think it's more the proof. But there is that black pepper, that lingering effect that's staying on the back of the palate. That's nice. I definitely think the Rock Hill and John J. Bowman are a lot closer together than Blanton's and John J. Bowman. So let's go one more with the Eagle Rare and see what we get. Cheers. Yeah, that's kind of a different ballpark. The Eagle Rare to me is a lot sweeter. More caramel, more cherry, amped up vanillas, good oak balance. One more sip. Yeah, even on that sip, that Eagle Rare is it's very balanced, but it doesn't really sway one way or the other. There's no big spice punch there. It's just very smooth, very easy to sip, very sweet, chocolate cherry, vanilla, hint of that pecan note as well, a little bit of a nuttiness characteristic. All right, so where I think John J. Bowman differentiates itself from the Buffalo Trace line of products is I think it's the mouthfeel, the oiliness characteristic, I think from that pot still. I do think the pot still also adds a little bit of a bite to the bourbon as well. Blanton's to me is definitely more of a sweeter profile. This one happens to be a little bit more oaky. Definitely a smoother finish than the John J. Bowman. The Rock Hill Farms might be the closest cousin here to John J. Bowman. This one has the bite to it. It's got some citrus from that higher rye mash bill, but I also think it's not as oily on the mouthfeel as I was getting on the John J. Bowman, which I think, again, comes from that pot still. But this one is also a little bit sweeter. So the Eagle Rare for me, which is the mash bill one, was probably the most different from the John J. Bowman out of all these. This one is a lot more easy to drink. It's a little bit more of an easy sipper. You got some oak there, you got some cherry, that sweet caramel, vanilla, a little bit of that pecan note that you love in the Buffalo Trace. So if I had to guess, I would think that the John J. Bowman is closer to mash bill 2 than mash bill 1. I think, like I said, the Rock Hill Farms, it's pretty damn close though. If you can't find Rock Hill Farms, and sometimes when you do find it, it's upcharged, just like most Buffalo Trace products, unfortunately. John J. Bowman is actually a pretty good alternative. Now, John J. Bowman, like I mentioned, it's $50. Probably a little bit easier to find. This is the single barrel, so they could differentiate a little bit. But if you can't find Rock Hill Farms, definitely try John J. Bowman. It's pretty close. It's not quite as sweet, but a very good alternative. All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this review for the John J. Bowman Single Barrel Virginia Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Hope you liked the comparison. Let me know down in the comments what you think. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button below. Please hit that like button. Find me on Instagram and find me on Twitter. Let me know if you've done this comparison, what you think. And as I always say, it is not about the whiskey, it's the people you share with. So cheers, and I'll see you next time on the Mash and Drum. Take care.